This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Here's what I'll say before we get into the podcast. If only listeners and viewers had the opportunity to watch and or listen to the last 10 minutes or so before we actually started to record this podcast, I think many of you would have been thoroughly entertained by Greg and I going back and forth just for the last 10 minutes or so about what we were talking about. But we're going to talk about the Patriots. We're going to talk about a little bit about the Bengals. Before we get into it, I want you to do us a favor. Download that Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on Prize Picks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks. Run your game. Also, our friends at Game Time, check them out. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with them. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. All right, before we get into some of the offensive line stuff, Greg, and a little bit of Brandon Ayuk, we'll try to do a little bit of Brandon Ayuk, not too much, because both of us have had enough of the Ayuk talk, I think.
Yes.
But let's get into Drake Maye first. So the Drake Maye quote-unquote plan. I take it that you don't like it, Greg.
No, I don't. I mean, look, I'm sure there's a lot that Jerod Mayo is not telling us about this decision, which is fine and I guess is good compared to some of the other stuff where he said too much about the situation, including the phrase Drake outplayed Jacoby, which I just think was a huge misstep by him. There was no reason to do it. There was no upside. And I don't think it's completely damaging, but it's just not a good way to go into the season for the fans, the locker rooms, the quarterbacks to hear, yeah, Drake outplayed Jacoby, but Drake's not starting the season. Jacoby is. Okay. I mean, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. But anyways, we've sort of talked about that before. So my issue with the Drake Maye plan now, which I think is maybe part 2 of the Drake Maye plan. We always heard about the plan. I'm sure it just didn't go through training camp and the preseason. I'm sure it was more like this is what his rookie year looks like. This is the progress that we want to see. These are the areas that he needs to get better. And
right.
Up until like the final week, we haven't heard Mayo say that Drake Maye was ready. I guess now he says he's ready. He says 1,000% he's ready to start week 2 if the worst case happens in week 1. I just don't like it from a development process as far as Drake Maye and when he needs to play. Like, Jerod says that he's ready to start week 2 in the worst case scenario when I was asking him questions the other day. Then why isn't he starting week 1? If that is the case, if he's ready and he's outplayed Jacoby, why isn't he playing? To me, I think a couple things are at play. Related to that, if he's not ready, if he's not truly ready, and again, the focus of the franchise, and I think there's a lot of people in the franchise, the focus is on 2025 and Drake Maye. They don't really care about this season. This season's sort of gravy, whatever you get from Drake Maye. It'd be nice to see him at some point, but really it's about 2025. It's the Patrick Mahomes plan, which is, sit him out almost all year, get his feet wet, and then go to town in 2025 when the team is better around him and it's more conducive for a young quarterback. I just don't like how they haven't signed another quarterback to the practice squad. Right now, it's just Jacoby, Drake, and Joe Milton. And, as coaches, as executives, like you just can't look at like the present day, like just in the immediate term. You have to think about all the different other factors you have to look down the line and you have to anticipate problems and you have to solve them before they become problems. So, as of right now, Jacoby Brissett, who already hurt his shoulder in the last preseason game, is going behind a shaky offensive line against Lou Anarumo, the Bengals defensive coordinator, a very experienced Bengals defense on the road. And I'm sorry, but you need to plan out worst case scenarios. And in that case, like you need to go get another quarterback, a veteran quarterback, have him on the practice squad, get him into the building, just to give yourself options to when, if the worst happens in week 2, somebody has to start. Jacoby's hurt. He can't start. At least you give yourselves options. I just think they're hoping that Jacoby Brissett stays healthy for at least the first month of the season. Through the 49ers game, 3 out of 4 on the road, including a Thursday night at New York, and all that's going to entail. I think ideally they don't want to entertain starting Drake Maye until week 5, but, hope is not a strategy. Hope is a prayer, and I'm not operating a football team on a hope and a prayer. I think they needed to do more, and I think they're leaving too much to chance, including the most valuable asset in this franchise at this time. There's too much risk involved, and I don't like it.
I think they would say that, hey, Drake Maye is ready, but he's not as ready as Jacoby Brissett. I watched you with Holly last night. I thought Holly made a good point about using the word prefer. I think they just prefer to start Brissett right now. I think they would tell you that they have confidence that Maye would be able to, quote-unquote, survive out there if they were starting week 1 with him. But they just prefer to go with the veteran quarterback in the first month because of the stuff you just mentioned. I agree with you. I've said this with you for the last few months. Bailey Zappi, as soon as they drafted Joe Milton along with Maye, maybe Zappi makes the team just because of the veteran quarterback insurance. And it's not because I'm concerned that Drake Maye is going to shrivel into a little tiny prune if he has to play week 1 or week 2. It's just, hey, if the offensive line isn't ready for Drake Maye in week 1, it's unlikely they'll be ready by week 2. And to go along with the wide receiver depth chart to figure things out, if you want him out there when he has the full assortment of wide receivers, when Kendrick Bourne gets back, all that kind of stuff. I do think, Greg, you mentioned, Mayo in his talking. Look, he has said too much. He continues to say too much. He hurts himself. He hurts the team. He hurts the quarterback situation. I think he confuses the fan base. He contradicts himself a lot because he constantly talks. A couple things that I found troublesome this week from Mayo and what he said. And again, if this all works out, it doesn't matter inevitably. Right. But what he's saying is not making things better. He said Monday, it confused me. I was on 98.5. I was doing the show solo in the midday, and I was reading the quotes on Twitter in real time while I was doing the show because he spoke a little bit before 1 o'clock or whatever it was. And he said, he mentioned that it was a competition. It's a legit competition, and they've been pushing competition this entire time. But then later on, he says, I don't want Jacoby Brissett feeling like somebody's nipping at his heels. It's like, well, that's the essence of a competition. If you're having an actual competition, it's because you want somebody nipping at somebody else's heels. That made no sense. And then today, he contradicted what he said earlier in the week, Greg. Earlier in the week, when you asked him the questions and all of that, and he was talking about the development, he said, oh, yeah, we have a plan at practice, and, he's going to be, working on the scout team, and he's going to be But then today, he says to the media that you get better by playing football. So earlier in the week, he's pushing this idea that Drake Maye will develop and get better at practice and with the film work and all of that stuff. But then he goes out there today and says, well, I think you get better by actually playing the game. So is Drake Maye going to be capable of developing at practice and watching film and all that stuff? Is he going to develop well enough for you? Or does he have to eventually get out there and play? And that's when he's going to really develop. It's these contradictions and back and forths that just drive me crazy, Greg.
Yeah, I agree with you. The messaging definitely isn't, in a straight line, and it's not concise, and it goes in different directions, and that's fine. I mean, look, he's a rookie head coach that was kind of rushed into this, and I don't think, right. I think we're both more about actions than words, and we might have concern about Mayo right now, but look, the games are going to start on Sundays, and so we're going to get a scoreboard, and even then, even if things go rough, you can always say, well, look at Dan Campbell. I mean, Dan Campbell, I think they were 2-14 his first year. His second year, I think they started 0-6 or something like that. And they came in here, they were freaking hot garbage. And then all of a sudden it turned around. And now the Lions are one of the favorites to go, if not win the Super Bowl this year. So it's not a, there's going to be a lot of overreaction, we know, to Sunday one way or the other. And we'll talk more about the Bengals, the game and our pick in the next couple days. But and here's the other thing when I say, like, I don't think Mayo is telling us everything. And this is where I can sort of see their quote unquote plan for Drake Maye. I think if those guys were telling you the truth, I think what they would say is they've been underwhelmed by Jacoby Brissett, certainly in the last about like 3 weeks. I think they see a lot of the concerns, and I've watched some of his start against the Bengals 2 years ago when they won, and statistically he had a really good game, but I didn't love the film from Jacoby Brissett. You see a lot of the same stuff that we've seen in practice in the preseason games where he's holding the ball a little bit too long. He's not seeing where the open receivers are. He's taking sacks. He's throwing balls unnecessarily across the field. Like, there's a lot to be concerned about. And I think really, if those guys were telling you the truth, they would probably say they don't think Jacoby's going to be very good. They think that Drake's going to be in there sooner rather than later, but they're trying to do right by Jacoby because they pretty much promised him the job, at least to start the season. And like, I would not be surprised if I don't know how quickly, but that Drake Maye is in there sooner rather than later because the two of them are so close. And like, a lot of it isn't how far Drake Maye's come, because I do think he still has a long ways to go. He really does to be a good, effective starter in this league. Does he make some splash plays? Yeah, but that's because he's a really good athlete, and we've seen him do it against second and third stringers. You know, it's sort of like what you would see out of him in ACC play, where, you know, the competition isn't that great, but he's just that good of an athlete that he's going to make plays, he's going to make some throws. But, you know, over the balance, you know, there's a lot of iffy stuff out there too that pretty much evens out the other stuff. And, you know, so, you know, I think he'll do okay once he gets in there. I really do not want to rush him, because I think even in these preseason games, you've seen after the initial sort of script, the first series, things start to go a little bit sideways, not haywire, because Drake does a good job of being very balanced. He's even keel. This is where I think there's a low chance of him turning into Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold in terms of pressure and getting flustered, and the media and the pressure and all this stuff getting to him and really affecting him. I don't think that's going to happen with Drake. I think he's got the stuff internally and in his head to survive all that stuff. And I think he's more along the lines of a Troy Aikman or Peyton Manning in terms of, or even an Andrew Luck, guys that came in. Granted, these guys were a lot more advanced than Drake Maye as quarterback, being ready to play in the NFL, given what they did in college. You know, but in terms of mentality, those guys took a pounding their rookie year. You know, a lot of interceptions, a lot of sacks, a lot of losses, and it didn't affect those guys. I think Drake is more like those guys makeup wise than the alternative, which is, I think gives the coaches confidence that even if they rush the plan a little bit, it's not going to be catastrophic for his development.
All right, we'll get the O-line to get to, maybe a little bit on Ayuk and some Bengals tidbits. But first, Greg, tell the fine people listening and or watching this program, this podcast, all about Prize Picks.
Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members, including me and Nick. Prize Picks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on Prize Picks, it's just you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less, like a guy's face comes up like Travis Kelce and like 85 yards receiving, and you say he's going to get more or less. That's it. It's really easy. 2 to 6 player stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. They're running a special this month. 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on Prize Picks every week in September. So if you do a four player, I don't know, whatever they call it, bet, and you put Caleb Williams in there, you're getting a free win, a free square. So all you have to do is win the other 3. That's right. Only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on Prize Picks, because it's gone when September ends. You can now win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct bets. Just to give you guys an example, how having a little fun with the Thursday night game. So I am going, these are my actual picks. I'm going Travis Kelce, more than 58.5 receiving yards. Isaiah Pacheco, my Rutgers guy. I'm going more. Yeah, that's my guy. I'm going more than 0.5 rush or receiving touchdowns. So I just need a touchdown from him. Derrick Henry, same thing. I'm going, all I need is one rushing or receiving touchdown from him. I can see the big fella getting a carry at the goal line. And then this one I'm a little unsure of, but I went with it. Patrick Mahomes, over 265.5 passing yards. I think the Ravens are going to play pretty good defense, but I think Mahomes is going to air it out. So those 4 picks, and I didn't even do the Caleb Williams thing because I wanted to play Thursday night. I didn't want to wait till Sunday. 4 picks will pay $160 for me. So those are my picks for Thursday night. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game.
All right, offensive line. City So talked to the media the other day, but he hasn't really done anything, right? He wasn't at practice yesterday from what I read. Nope. Vidarian Lowe, banged up, working away from the team. So going into Sunday, right now, Greg, it looks like it would be a core of 4, Leverett, Andrews, Robinson, Owenu at right tackle. Your thoughts about where this offensive line is right now before we get to week 1?
Yeah, so I was kind of surprised that City wasn't even on the practice field when we were there on, I guess that was Monday, Monday. And they should be out there this afternoon. Today's Wednesday. I
want to correct myself. It was Monday he wasn't out there. They were off yesterday. My bad.
Yeah. And I was at City's locker when he was talking. He was suited up for practice. He talked to us. He sort of deflected the question when asked if he's going to be able to practice and play this Sunday. He mostly talked about that. He thought he did something to his Achilles. And I think we talked about it last podcast where I said, my initial opinion was at best, it's a high ankle sprain. At worst, it's a popped Achilles and he's out for the year. And that was his fear initially, even though he didn't think it was that bad. He was able to walk a little bit once he got off the field. And he said the MRI was negative. So he said, quote unquote, it's not torn. But just look at like Kristaps Porzingis. What happened to him during the postseason at the end of the year where, he all of a sudden pulled up lame and he didn't tear his Achilles, but there was something with the calf. And anytime you get into that territory, man, watch out. Like you push it, you tear that Achilles, look out. So I wouldn't expect to see City. Now, the left guard thing is interesting. Leverett is mostly a guard. We've seen him. Most of the fans have seen him at center with what's gone on this summer. He did start one game or play a lot one game when he was with the Bucs at center with Tom Brady at quarterback, and I thought he did fine. He obviously had some issues in the preseason for the Patriots, but he's really a guard, and he's a solid player. I just find it interesting that is he just a placeholder in case So gets back? We'll get our first injury report today. I also think there's a chance that Michael Jordan, who was released in the second wave of cuts from the roster, signed to the practice squad. He's been mostly the left guard backup during the course of the summer. And I actually think he's played pretty well. He's played a lot of NFL games. I think he's probably one of the best linemen that they have technique-wise in the zone blocking scheme because he's done it before. So I don't rule out the possibility that Jordan is a elevation for game day, and he could start or split time with Leverett at left guard if needed. Certainly, I think he'll be up because Leverett's the backup center. So if anything happens to David Andrews, Leverett moves over to center. Michael Jordan pops into left guard. But I do think, and we've heard Mayo talk about it, Nick, about this offensive line, which is basically what we saw in the last preseason game outside of I came on here and told you and the listeners that, it wasn't as bad as it looked under the torrential flags being thrown all over the place. And if they could get Okorafor to line up in the proper place, it wasn't that bad, and it looked pretty good at times. And I think this is further, and Mayo even talked about it, that he thought some of that was overblown. And I think this is further confirmation that, it looked pretty good the other day. And I think the more they get to practice, we talked about before the preseason game, they didn't have a padded practice together. They only had 2 sort of jog throughs, not really fair to them. So, I do think for now, I do think this is their best line and gives them the best chance to be effective against the Bengals.
I stand by what I've said. I'm going to give them the first 4 or 5 weeks of the season, settle up front, see what they've got. I think they have, if so is healthy, I think they have at least 3 solid to good to very good linemen. I think Owenu arguably is, very good if he plays guard. Andrews is Andrews. I think So's fine. I even think Layden Robinson. All you need is one of those 2 guys, So or Robinson, to work out for you. And they have options. Chooks, can he settle at right tackle at least if you get Vidarian Lowe back? Caden Wallace, who's shown flashes. He's gotten better throughout camp. Does he end up your right tackle by week 4 or 5? So I'm going to give him time to let it settle. I know that's not popular, but that's the way I look at it. Maybe I'm a little bit more patient than others.
No, react now, Nick. No. Call it garbage. Call it garbage. Indict Elliott Wolf.
Speaking of indicting Elliott Wolf and everything else, do you have anything more to share about Brandon Ayuk? Because I know you and I believe, feel mostly the same way about this thing, and I think we're both pretty frustrated with some of the quote-unquote narratives that are out there. But do you have any final parting words on your podcast about Ayuk?
So, and I think I saw you tweet this earlier, and I totally agree that, if you were going to criticize the Patriots, if they blew Calvin Ridley out of the water with an offer, because I think they offered around 20, I think he ended up getting like 22. If they went 25, 26, something like that, is there a chance Calvin Ridley would be here? Yeah, there's a chance. I still think at the end of the day, his wife or girlfriend or whatever, from what I understand, and I've heard this from multiple NFL sources, she did not want to leave the South. They've been in the South their whole lives.
Greg, obviously, you're just carrying the Patriots' water on this. Obviously. You are a mouthpiece for Elliott Wolf. How dare you say you spoke to multiple people that said that it actually didn't just come down to the money? I just want to make sure that we have that out there. How dare you? And
also that I was paid off by a perch at practice that the Patriots gave me, I guess, to make me fat and happy and to say all nice things about the Patriots, even though I've second-guessed what they've done in the draft. I've been, critical of some of their decisions as far as the roster, the final 53, how they're handling the quarterback. But anyways, so, I mean, do I think there's a chance that Ridley could have been here, that you could second-guess that? Yes, slightly, but again, Calvin Ridley's a number 2 receiver. And his wife, girlfriend, she did not want to leave the South. They've been in the South their whole life. Okay. And the Brandon Ayuk signs with the 49ers, which I told you he was never going to leave. They were not going to trade him. It was all this was a song and dance. Ayuk talked to the media the other day, basically admitted that he orchestrated this whole thing to remain in San Francisco, that he was using the Patriots and the Browns and the Steelers and whatever just to get the 49ers up. So bravo to Brandon Ayuk and his representatives for doing that. This has nothing to do with guaranteed money or anything like that. Don't listen to any of this misdirection nonsense that's out there on the airwaves locally. They're missing the point, predictably and on purpose, to distract you, to be entertaining, to rip the team because there's nothing else really going on in the two week run up to the season. Brandon Ayuk was never coming here. Now, So you have two receivers who did not want to leave where they were or their region. Okay, the Patriots lost out on two receivers, yes, but that doesn't mean that. I don't think you could take any overarching things like New England's not a destination, or they're being cheap, or it just happened to be two receivers that the likelihood of them getting either one wasn't great, but at least they tried. Okay, and I'm sure some people will mock that and say, yay, they tried. I mean, I do think if you're being honest, I do think it's a good sign for the future as they build this thing that Elliott Wolf obviously looks at this roster and says, we need a number one receiver. He went out and tried to get a number one receiver, and he's bringing a bag, which we know Bill Belichick never would have done. I think Brandon Cooks is still like the leading receiver that they've ever had in terms of payment for one season, and that was a long ass time ago. So look, get beyond IU, get beyond Calvin Ridley. Hope that the draft, hopefully they can get a tackle in the draft. I've been starting to watch those guys. The guy from LSU, Cooper.
Campbell.
Yeah. Is that his name, Cooper?
I think it's Campbell.
Campbell.
Right?
Campbell? Will Campbell. And then there's a guy at Texas who I really like as far as his skills. But watching a lot of offense tackles, you get that tackle in the draft. You sign a wide receiver next year, probably draft another one, and start building this thing. But don't overreact to the Brandon Ayuk stuff. It's a total non-story, and yeah, it just is.
I'll just say this. If you want to listen to my entire tangent, you can check it out on YouTube, Zoe and Bertrand, 98.5's YouTube channel. They took the whole segment I did on Ayuk from Monday, so it's up on that YouTube channel. I went into a lot of detail, so I'm not going to waste time doing it here. I'll just say every single report from every single credible reporter, I'm talking locally, I'm talking nationally, I'm talking out on the West Coast, all of them, they all agree universally that the Patriots had the best offer. And multiple reporters out of those reporters have said that includes guaranteed money. And the latest was Greg's buddy, Bert Breer, said it on Sunday Night Sports Sunday. Money was not a factor. Across the board, the Patriots had the best financial offer for Ayuk. So that's what's been reported. I don't know why we've got to go with this fakakta theory that was created on the radio versus what's actually been reported by credible people. I'll also say this. I guarantee you, if the same credible reporters reported the opposite, our buddy Felger would be dry humping that report for the next 5 years about how, did you see what Josina Anderson tweeted about there wasn't enough guaranteed money? Did you see what Matt Mayoko tweeted? Did you see what Bert Breer said? Did you see what Jeremy Fowler said? Unfortunately, our buddy Felger can't do that because those reports don't exist. What exists is they offered the most money. So, as he would say, fact, not opinion. The other thing I would say, you brought up second guesses. I think there are three. I tweeted this out just a few moments ago. You can follow me at Nick C Radio. I think there are three reasonable second guesses about Elliott Wolf's offseason. The Ridley thing that Greg brought up, signing Chooks Okorafor instead of Jonah Williams. Mm-hmm. I would let you know, by the way, that out in Arizona, they're not necessarily thrilled with Jonah Williams' play at right tackle in the preseason and camp. He wasn't very good. So him and Chooks both kind of struggled. And the draft. In the draft conversation with the context, and Greg has tweeted about this and wrote about this and talked about it, is you had an option. You could have traded the pick that ended up being Caden Wallace and the pick that ended up being Javon Baker to move up and draft Kingsley Suamataia. But that stuff, to me, the Chooks, Jonah conversation and the draft conversation, if you want to be real about it, we don't know. Mm-hmm. 7 weeks, 8 weeks down the road, if Wallace is the starting right tackle and Javon Baker within the next year or two, and I hate to say that, people, a year, yes. I don't grade drafts or players out of drafts until like 2 years down the road at least.
Right.
If Wallace ends up being a starting right tackle and Javon Baker ends up being a legitimate 2 or 3 receiver and Kingsley Suamataia is okay at left tackle for Kansas City, that's the conversation. But to me, those are the three reasonable second guesses you can have. The draft, trading up, Jonah versus Chooks, and paying Ridley more money. And we'll see. I had no issue with Ridley. I had no issue not paying him as much as they would have had to possibly get him. I was fine with what they did there. And we'll see how the offensive line unfolds and whether or not, if it's a disaster. And if it's bad, I'll be first in line to be yelling and screaming and criticizing Elliott Wolf. All right, before we
hang on one sec, Nick. I want to add something on that, but first let me tell people about Game Time. It's that time of year, there's a chill in the air. It's football season. Love this time of year, and you got to get out to a football game, whether it's college football, pro football, high school football, whatever. But if you want to go to a game, you got to check out Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play even easier. Game Time Picks filter out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature, I just did it before, shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. I hate those freaking fees at the end when I'm trying to order tickets. It's like double the cost. You're like, what the hell? Now I can't even afford to go. And I love the seat views. Get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. This is a must for me. I need to know what I can see, whether it's a concert, whether it's a football game, baseball game. I need to know, especially at Fenway with, poles in the way and things like that. I was just checking the app for deals on Patriots tickets. And to me, it looks like if you want to go down Thursday night, Jets, Meadowlands, it's an easy drive down from up here. You might be in the metro area, easy way. Some pretty good deals on there. I saw that you could get on the second deck at MetLife for all in around $200. And you definitely don't want to go to the third level because you don't know what kind of hooligans you're going to see up there at a night game at MetLife. So go check out those deals. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. So on the personnel thing, one thing I wanted to add, well, two things. Number one, and you're a master at pronouncing Kingsley's name. It's yeah, whatever. So he's Big Kingsley. By the way, I need to tweet this out. I need to take, all right, who's going to be the first masshole who tweets at me when Kingsley gets either a holding penalty, gives up a sack, goes offside. Bedard, nice trade up pick. What do you think about your boy now? All right, can we just relax? He's a rookie starting his first game Thursday night against the Ravens. It's not going to be perfect, but yeah, he would have been my guy. And this is not a recent second guess. And I haven't waited to hear how his training camp has gone. 2 days after the draft, I said that I would have drafted Drake Maye. I would have taken the Chargers trade down that picked up the 4th round pick. I would have stayed. I would not have come up for Xavier Worthy or anything else. I'll stay with Jalen Polk. And then I would have traded the Wallace and Baker pick up for Kingsley. That's what I would have done. That was one of my big second guesses from the draft. And like Nick says, we'll see. And in general, that's what I just wanted to say. Look, I'm sure there are a lot of fans out there, and I hear them calling in. I hear the talk show hosts, and they're ripping Elliott Wolf and the front office for not doing this and that. And it's dereliction of duty what they've done with the offensive line. And they might be right. Okay. But this is the way I always approach things. I approach things from these guys, whether it's Bill Belichick and Matt Groh, Bill Belichick and Nick Caserio, or now Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith and Pat Stewart and Matt Groh. These guys are not dumb guys. Okay. They have been at this, most of them, a very long time. They have a lot of experience in the league. I didn't see this myself, but I heard this. Apparently, The Athletic did some sort of poll about which GMs do you trust the most, and I think Elliott Wolf got the leading votes. It was only 5, but from agents saying who's the GMs you trust the most, which doesn't mean anything. It's just nice to hear. But the way I look at it is these guys are smart. They've done this a long time. They obviously thought through what they were doing personnel-wise on this team. They definitely debated Chukwuekorfor or Jonah Williams. They entertained Tyron Smith or the alternative. And there's a reason why they made the decisions that they did. Some of it was probably monetary, that they looked at the PFF grades. Even if you looked at those as lay people like us, Chooks was rated better by PFF than Jonah Williams last year. And Jonah Williams is getting, I don't know, double-digit $1 million, and Chooks Core 4 is getting like 5 here. So
yeah,
all those things come into play. The bottom line for me is, like, I'm not going to stomp my feet and, throw a hissy fit until I actually see it on the field. We're going to know whether these moves work or not. But I think these guys are entitled to make their decisions, whether it's in the draft or free agency or what have you, to field a team this year that they think is competitive. And Elliott Wolf thinks that they have the pieces on the offensive line to be competitive. A lot of people would say they don't. I'm not ready to say that yet. I am waiting for the season. And by the midpoint of the season, about there towards the end of the season, we'll all know whether they were right or wrong. But these guys aren't just sitting there pinching money and trying to field a bad football team. They tried to do the best with what they have, and looking into the future as well, in terms of, let's not spend all our assets in one offseason. Let's, is it better? What do we use here? What's better next year? Is it a good free agent class? What about the draft? They're looking at all these stuff. These guys are smart. Elliott Wolf and Alonzo Highsmith have been waiting their whole careers to be put in this position. And they've done a lot of good work for a lot of years. And so my default with everybody, and it's not just Elliott Wolf, who, yes, I covered with the Green Bay Packers and who I respect. But this is the same with Bill. Every year I'd be like, well, I don't really like what Bill's done, but Bill's earned the right, and so we'll see. And so that's sort of where I am going into the season and their personnel.
Could not agree more. Just have one more question for you before we go. But before I get to that question, take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Also, you want to check out our friends at Prize Picks. Use code CLNS, get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's $50 instantly when you play $5. Don't even need to win to receive that $50 bonus. Use the code CLNS. And don't forget about BSJ, $50 for the year, with Bedard and Giardi doing great work on the Patriots. My final question for you before we bounce. Jamar Chase, Zach Taylor just spoke to the media. He was asked if Chase is going to practice today. He said, quote unquote, we'll see. Do you think Jamar Chase plays on Sunday?
I do not think that he plays. But, I mean, I could totally be wrong, but I don't know. It looks like he's trying to make a stand. Now, I would not be surprised. Mike Brown has a history of this, sort of giving in once the calendar turns to September, and they sign him on, Friday or Saturday. But I don't know. I mean, that would be really rough to throw him out there week one. I think that would not be a good idea. So I'm going to say I do not think he is playing week one.
One more note for those Patriots fans who are into the throwback thing. The Patriots just announced they will have their throwbacks on week 6 and week 13. So make that note. Week 6, week 13, throwback uniforms. Those 2 weeks. All right, he's Greg. I'm Nick. We'll talk to you later in the week about this Bengals game. See ya.